Tommy Pham, you son of a gun, you did it. What's going on, Cardinals fans, and welcome in to this edition of b-schaeff Daily. Brenden Schaeffer with you, breaking down trade deadline day across Major League Baseball. But did we ever get something else to talk about as the Cardinals and Rangers did battle on Tuesday night, and Tommy Pham, who the Cardinals traded for on Monday, they activated on Tuesday, made his mark in his first at-bat back with the Cardinals at almost 6 years to the day after the Cardinals traded him away the first time. That was July 31st, 2018. Do you remember the deal? It was the trade that sent Tommy Pham to Tampa Bay, Genesis Cabrera and Justin Williams coming back, and I believe Roel Ramirez was in that trade coming to the Cardinals as well. That was July 31, 2018. And here on July 30th, 2024, Tommy Pham in the fifth inning gets a pinch hit opportunity against Cody Bradford. The moment that Oli Marmol has been waiting for all season long, to have a right-handed bat off his bench that could do damage, that he trusted for a situation like that. Tommy Pham was that guy tonight, and boy, did he ever deliver. Opposite field home run, Busch Stadium going absolutely insane, and the vibes are back. Doesn't it feel like the vibes are back? I know it's just one win. I know the Cardinals still trail the Brewers by 6 games in the NL Central. Cardinals did gain a game on Milwaukee, though, tonight as they beat the Rangers 8-1, and the Brewers, they lost their matchup against the Atlanta Braves, so the Cardinals claw back 1 game closer to the Milwaukee Brewers in the Central, which is nice to see because literally nothing happened in terms of the wild card race tonight. We've talked about there being 6 teams that are legitimately in the mix, all of them within 2 games for 3 spots, and all of them won tonight. The Braves, Mets, Padres, Diamondbacks, Pirates, and Cardinals, all 6 of those teams victorious. So they didn't pick up any ground in the wild card race. Cardinals still 2 games back of the Padres and Mets. They're a game and a half back of the D-backs, who are currently not in a spot themselves. And the Cardinals are tied with Pittsburgh at 55 and 52. On a wild day across Major League Baseball, lots of trades did end up happening. The Cardinals didn't exactly make a splash at the bell for the trade deadline at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, but they did do the move that we had been anticipating, that we were waiting to find out what was going to become of Dylan Carlson. The Cardinals had to wait to activate Tommy Pham until after trading Dylan Carlson, because it was either trade him or option Dylan to Memphis. And I know there are Cardinals fans that thought, well, just option him, and maybe he's able to work out some of the kinks and the flaws in his game and could come back to the Cardinals and recoup some of his value. I'm here to tell you, Cardinals fans, that was never going to happen. If Dylan Carlson had been exiled to Memphis, Tennessee, he was going to be there the rest of the season. It was going to be a really unfortunate situation for him personally, and the Cardinals were never going to look to get value out of him back in terms of getting him back up to the big leagues. They would have had Matt Koperniak up before Dylan Carlson ever would have gotten another look if there had been a need in the outfield. Reading this quote from John Mozeliak this afternoon after the trade of Dylan Carlson to Tampa Bay had been completed. Found this quote on Katie Wu's timeline. Of course, I was not at Busch Stadium this afternoon. Was doing my radio show, which you guys may have seen live on YouTube. I did roll out a live stream from 4 to 6 with the trade deadline going on today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. But Katie had the quote. It's here. Quote, in all honesty, it just wasn't working here. Speaking of Dylan Carlson. We were going to be left on a tough decision on what to do. He's a talented guy, but his playing time here, it wasn't fair to him, and it wasn't helping us. So it was just a situation where everybody involved, from John Mozeliak to Oli Marmol to Dylan Carlson himself, understood what had to be done. And it's the best thing for Dylan. It's the best thing for the Cardinals. Now, they get a right-handed relief pitcher, Shawn Armstrong, that we'll talk about in a little bit as we go along here. I want to get into the game first, obviously, without getting too far away from it, because Tommy Pham, what he did tonight was unbelievable. But that may be not the return Cardinals fans were looking for from either the Dylan Carlson trade specifically that we knew was imminent and we've been telling you about for days and days, or maybe for Cardinals fans, it was more about, well, it's okay. Whatever you got for Dylan is fine. I didn't expect him to have much value. Perhaps you're thinking that way. But you may have wanted to see the Cardinals do another deal for a more prominent relief pitcher ahead of the 5 p.m. deadline Tuesday. Regardless of how you're feeling about it, let me know in the comments below on YouTube and Spotify. You can leave comments on Spotify now as well. I would actually love for you to do so. It's a new feature, and I want to see kind of honestly how it works. So if you're a Spotify listener, you figure it out. I legitimately have no idea. They just rolled this out in recent weeks. But let me know and hit that subscribe button on YouTube if you enjoy daily Cardinals content. We've picked up over 100 subscribers in the past 24 hours, it feels like. So really appreciate everybody who has come aboard. We're not going anywhere. Just because the trade deadline is passed does not mean the content machine stops flowing. We will continue putting out daily Cardinals content all the way through the end of the season and into the offseason. I don't know if it's going to be 7 days a week over the winter, but probably 5 days a week because there's always plenty to talk about when it comes to Cardinals baseball 12 months a year. So appreciate you guys for hopping in here with me. But let me know in the comments your thoughts about the trade, and I'll get into it a little bit more as we go along. But I want to first just bask in the glow of what Tommy Pham did tonight for the St. Louis Cardinals. 6 years almost to the day after leaving the organization, goes on a winding trip around Major League Baseball. He was in the World Series last year with the Diamondbacks and got a taste of it, right? He got a taste of that and said, I want some more. I want to try to play for a contender this year if I can. You know what? I want to knock on the Cardinals' door down in Jupiter. And he did. Tommy Pham tried to get back with the Cardinals. That's been widely reported. And as of spring training, the Cardinals were sort of in a thanks but no thanks mode. And it made you wonder, are there burned bridges there? Are the Cardinals, would they not be accepting of Tommy Pham back in that clubhouse for one reason or another? We didn't really know. Honestly, looking back at it now, I don't know if it was that so much as Cardinals had a lot of outfielders even still. We know that they have been in a position over the years where there has been sort of a roster crunch in their outfield. There certainly was at the beginning of 2023. And even with some of the moves the offseason, you trade away Dylan Carlson. Probably didn't make very much sense at the beginning of the year for the Cardinals to go out and pursue Tommy Pham at the time. However, you did notice the right-handed threat off the bench really hasn't been a thing for the Cardinals this year. 29th in MLB in batting average and OPS against left-handed pitching, and that has come in part due to the struggles of Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt not being up to career norms for those guys. Jordan Walker, obviously, we thought he would be a big part of the team. He struggled early. We haven't seen him since. That's another big right-handed bat. So it has just been a rough year for the Cardinals against left-handed pitching, but especially when you think about it from the bench perspective. And that's where Oli Marmol comes in, right? Because as a manager, you want some toys to play with on your bench. You want to be able to show your managerial chops and say, here are the spots where I'm going to choose to pick out a platoon advantage. And here's where we can come up with a late-game substitution. And he has really been managing this Cardinals team with one hand tied behind his back this season with a bench of Matt Carpenter, left-handed hitter, Brandon Crawford, left-handed hitter. And I'm not even trying to poo-poo those guys and their offensive prowess. We know the numbers haven't been tremendous from those players this year. But the main point I'm trying to make is that they're lefties. So you can't really have the benefit of a late-game substitution against a lefty if there's one on the mound by using either of those guys. And they're usually on the bench. They did happen to both start tonight, and they combined to go 3 for 6. So good contributions from the veterans there. Talking about the rest of the bench, you typically have a backup catcher, whether that had been Ivan Herrera, then Pedro Pajes, and then Pajes obviously outlasting Herrera. But in most cases, you're not going to use that player as a pinch hitter because it can put you into a bit of a bind. In terms of if there's an injury, that guy had already been subbed out of the game. Who do you go to as the emergency catcher? You don't see it a ton. The other spot on the bench, and I know that it hadn't been this way all year, but in recent weeks has been Dylan Carlson. Well, he's a switch-hitting outfielder, so he can play all the outfield spots, and he can give you an at-bat from either side of the plate. And over the course of his career, he's been better as a right-handed hitter facing left-handed pitching. So, in theory, Dylan Carlson should have been perfect for that spot. The problem had been, as we all know, Dylan Carlson has not been performing this season. It hasn't really mattered. Left-handed, right-handed, it hasn't made a difference. The confidence for Dylan Carlson had completely evaporated. You could see it in his play. You could see it in the at-bats that he takes. You could see it in the field. And that led to diminished playing time, and it sort of becomes a vicious circle. You're not playing well. Manager doesn't trust you. You don't play even as often as you were before. But that being said, if you're the Cardinals manager, or any manager for that matter, you want to be able to have some utility to the guys that can come off your bench. So to go out and be able to swap Dylan Carlson, who clearly Oli had very little faith or belief would be a viable late-game substitution to take a big at-bat and come up with a key hit. Like, you could do it. You could put him out there, and then he could be versatile enough to play any defensive spot in the outfield. But what are you really gaining if the numbers aren't there at the plate from him? Tommy Pham, in his first opportunity to do precisely the thing the Cardinals have been missing all season long, does the damn thing. Grand slam to the opposite field, breaks the game wide open. It was a 4-1 game. Cardinals then lead it 8-1, and that would be the final score. Tommy bleepin' Pham comes through in exactly the scenario the Cardinals and Oli Marmol, boy, is he going to sleep good tonight, because he finally has a chance to use his bench. And he said as much after the game, audio courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest. Oli Marmol, listen to the very end of this clip and tell me he's not excited to have the chance to manage Tommy Pham. Whether he's on the bench, in the lineup, isn't going to make a difference. Tell me he's not excited to have Tommy Pham back on the St. Louis Cardinals.
Man, what a cool moment. From the second he stepped onto the on-deck circle, you can hear the crowd starting to get into it, and once they said his name, the place went nuts. And for your first at-bat back home, to do what he did today was special, man. You could tell. I mean, the players loved every second of it. Our fans were really into it, and we got a right-handed bat we can use, man. So yeah, welcome back, Tommy.
That's it right there at the end. Oli Marmol, we've got a right-handed bat we can use, man. Welcome back, Tommy. He said that with a big old grin on his face, couldn't hide it if he wanted to. And it's not difficult to understand why that would be. I mean, that in reverse would be, oh, now I see you. That was a cry for help every time you were talking about the bench before you got this Tommy Pham character on your bench. Oli Marmol, look, I understand there are things that Oli Marmol does, fan base doesn't like. Oli Marmol had been hamstrung by this roster in many ways. I think you could still make the case that there are elements of the bullpen that maybe could have been made a little bit stronger today by the front office. It didn't end up really happening that way. We'll get into the Dylan trade and what we think of their addition of Shawn Armstrong, but they didn't go out and get a legit leverage guy that they had to pay up some prospect capital to receive, which is understandable based on wanting to retain your prospects when you don't necessarily have one of the top farm systems at this point in time. So the Cardinals were able to get moves done without trading from their prospect capital, and you can chalk that up as a win, especially if some of those prospects can eventually attain big league status and be contributors at this level, but that's a story for another day. But particularly when it comes to the bench, Oli Marmol, there's just not a lot for him to be able to do. When Siani had been not an everyday player in the games where he's on the bench, you can do some fun things, especially if you're in a close game late, if you're tied or even ahead by a run. Maybe you can pinch run Siani and he can find a way to score, and then he's in for defense and might make a great play in the last inning or two out in center field to be able to help you win a game. That's fun. But from a perspective of needing a big clutch pinch hit late in a game, Cardinals didn't have anybody like that on their bench for the most part. And what a major upgrade. This is why the Cardinals fought to include Tommy Pham in a 3-team trade that was complicated enough as it was. This is why Tommy Pham had to be in the trade. I've been beating the drum for Tommy Pham for multiple months this season, and the Cardinals obviously saw the same thing. 848 OPS against lefties coming into today. The Cardinals as a team, 29th in baseball in batting average against lefties, as well as OPS against lefties. This guy does things the Cardinals have not done, and he does it off the bench in a day where, look, Max Scherzer was the starter. Oli Marmol tried to load the lineup up with lefties. You had Crawford in there. You had Carpenter in there. It worked out. Those guys contributed. But when Max Scherzer only goes 4 innings, they bring in a lefty. And look, this is why it matters when we talk about having a lineup that you can roll 1 through 9 with balance, and you can see the right, left, right, left, right, left. And then it got into left, left, left at the bottom. It was Oli Marmol almost daring Bruce Bochy to do this. And granted, the part of the lineup that he did it with, it's even more interesting that it happened, because 6, 7, 8, 9 in today's lineup for Oliver Marmol were left-handed batters. But because Scherzer is only able to get through 4, and credit to the Cardinals in the early innings of this game to score 1 run each off of Max in the first, second, and third. Mason Wynn leads off the game with a home run for the Cardinals, the first pitch he saw. That's really cool to see off Max Scherzer. He's going to remember that one for a long time. He's hitting 280 with a 736 OPS of the season. Mason's numbers have dipped recently, so that was nice for him to see. Even tonight was only 1 for 5. That was his lone hit. But his 7th home run of the season, really cool to see. Matt Carpenter had a double against Max Scherzer in this game, his 5th of the season. But that spot in the 5th inning, the inning opens up with Michael Ciani. It's very interesting. I think in an ideal world, if you're Bruce Bochy, Mad Max would have been able to get through 5 and he only throws 68 pitches and they take him out. So I don't know how designed that was before the game. I hadn't really seen any scuttlebutt or talk about it after the fact. But if he gets you through 5 and you can try and get to that spot in the lineup where a bunch of lefties stack up in a row, maybe then you at least make it more difficult on Oli Marmol to have to make a decision. Are you trying to make a move in the middle of the game for, who are you going to take out to bring Tommy Pham in when that bottom of the order is, now obviously Carpenter is who was pinch hit for ultimately, and he's a DH, so that works. But Crawford's an infielder, Gorman's an infielder. Ciani obviously would work if you had to pinch hit for him, but then you don't have his defense at the end. It is kind of interesting, the spot that Max Scherzer had to come out. Now I'm seeing it on Twitter. Arm fatigue is what happened with Max Scherzer tonight. So, yeah, him going only 4 was not in the plans. And when you get the other team on their heels, to be able to take advantage of it in Major League Baseball is huge. And immediately when Bruce Bochy had to go off script for this game, the Cardinals put the pressure on to Cody Bradford, brings in a lefty, like I said, and when you do that against a spot in the Cardinals order that goes Ciani, and then it goes right, left, right, left, right, left, you're going to get some righties against Cody Bradford. And that contributed to the Cardinals having a chance in the inning. But what's amazing about that inning, maybe one of the best innings of the Cardinals season, if not the best, because you found ways to score a crooked number through a variety of methods, right? Inning leads off with Michael Ciani, the 9-hole batter, left on left, and as a result, probably doesn't feel... And look, he has done better against lefties more recently, and Ciani's numbers are starting to climb to the extent that it will be very interesting to see how much Tommy Pham plays versus Ciani. I assume we're going to see Tommy Pham on Wednesday with a lefty slated to start for the Texas Rangers. Andrew Heaney on the bump, and I can't wait to see where Tommy Pham lands in the Cardinals lineup against a lefty. I mean, you could probably, honest to God, I'd probably bat him 5th, and I would move Goldie and Arenado down a little bit. I don't think we're going to see Oli Marmol necessarily do that, but this guy against lefties he should be batting early in the game. Wilson bats 3rd. Maybe he just bats cleanup. And that's the spot of the lineup where they go consecutive righties. You'll go Contreras 3, and then maybe you don't break it up. It's Tommy Pham 4, Nootbaar down at 5. Goldie, against the lefty, they might just stack a bunch of righties in the middle. We'll see. Arenado had the night off tonight, so all the more reason that if it was a big AB for Crawford or Gorman, it would have been a little more tricky to pinch hit Pham and say, hey, Arenado, you coming into the game? Typically, when they give the big dogs a game off, they'd like to be able to honor the full game off. Sometimes you can't. And certainly in that 5th inning spot, you weren't going to see Arenado pinch hit. So the fact that Bradford has to come in, they get through the whole part of the lineup that has the righties in it. So if you're the Rangers, you think, well, at least we got through that while only allowing 1 run. Michael Ciani, I'll get to it. I know I tend to kind of talk around things sometimes. I'll work on it. Look, doing a show every single day, eventually I'm going to get pretty good at this, right? This broadcasting thing, I'm going to get better. That's the best news of all about a B-Schaeff Daily podcast where I podcast about the Cardinals every single day. Eventually, I'm not going to be as terrible at this. That's the beauty of it. But Ciani leads it off with a bunt single. That's just what he does. Steals second base. Another reason that Michael Ciani in the lineup is such a good thing, because he can do things like that. He can turn a bunt single, a situation where you're left on left, he can turn that essentially into a double with his speed. He stole his 14th base of the year, and as Chip Carey would put it, ABC baseball, Mason Wynn ground out to the right side in order to advance Ciani, and then Burleson with the one-out base hit. So that is just a pure manufactured run, but it comes in the same inning as the grand slam does. Wilson gets a base hit, and then Paul Goldschmidt gets the walk to load him up for Pham. And that's the pinch hit scenario that Oli Marmol just has not been able to do all season long. Just a very rare scenario that he's had. Maybe somebody has an off day, he can do that. But Tommy Pham against the lefty, it reminds you, remember in 2022 when Oli Marmol seemed to you guys to be a better manager than maybe you thought he was last year, or even that you've considered to have been so far this season? Remember who he had a lot of times on his bench? And then toward the end of the season, he was obviously playing every day. Some guy by the name of Albert Pujols. You remember the game against the Colorado Rockies? Austin Gomber on the hill. Cardinals were up big, and it was like at the third inning or the fourth inning, and the bases were loaded. And Oli Marmol says, we're about to go in for the kill, because if they let Austin Gomber face Albert Pujols here, this baseball game is over. And he made it like 10-0 with a grand slam. That's what tonight felt like with Tommy Pham, where it's Tommy Pham's not Albert Pujols. I get it. Calm down. But the notion of a manager can recognize a moment and say, this is why the guy is on the baseball team. Here's where we deploy our resources effectively. And it changed it ended the game in the fifth inning tonight to have Tommy Pham available. If he's not on the team, if they don't include him in that trade, Dylan Carlson doesn't take that at bat. Arenado probably doesn't either, because if it's the eighth inning, Arenado probably does. You bring him in. In the fifth inning, I think they're honoring the off day at that point. And you say, hey, let Carp take a tough left on left, but you probably don't get the same result, right? So it's such a demonstration of exactly why this matters and why Tommy Pham was such a perfect target for the Cardinals. He's not going to play every day, but when he doesn't play, he is a weapon that you have to think about if you're the opposing manager. You don't get to go through a run of lefties with a lefty reliever without the threat of a guy like Tommy Pham coming off the bench to take an at bat in a plus matchup for him. This is why this stuff matters. Could not have been a more perfect demonstration of that tonight than what Tommy Pham put together, with an opposite field home run too. I mean, he stayed through the ball, stayed on it, drove it with power the opposite way, like into the gap too, and out. Incredible. And Oli Marmol mentioned it. I played the quote from him courtesy of Bally Sports. The teammates were going crazy. Obviously, the fans were going nuts. The fans gave him an ovation before he stepped even up to the plate, which tells you the couple of rogue folks and stray YouTube comments I get that are Tommy Pham haters. I don't know what planet you guys are living on. Look, I know that Tommy Pham rubs some people the wrong way. His personality, though, for the people in that clubhouse, it's infectious. He wants to win, and that's going to rub off on people. I'm not saying the clubhouse didn't already want to win, but if you want the Cardinals to win, you'll want Tommy Pham on this baseball club this year. I am just telling you the way that it is. Whatever interpersonal dynamics, look, if it's a Cardinals fantasy football league within the clubhouse, maybe you have some conversations before Tommy joins up, okay? That's all I'm saying. It is kind of right that time, too. My fantasy football YouTube channel is going strong. I'm starting to put videos on that. By the way, if you want to help me out, give that a sub, the fantasy football channel. I might even throw the link in the description to this video, just because I got to get it to 1,000 subscribers before I can make a penny off of it. And that would really help me a lot. But anyway, if that's what you're worried about, all right, whatever. But Tommy Pham is a teammate. Nobody is doubting, man. Nobody is doubting Tommy Pham in that clubhouse. And the fan base largely, we saw tonight, doesn't doubt him either. He got an ovation before he stepped to the plate. Just reflect, if you're a Tommy Pham hater, on why you actually feel that way about Tommy Pham. He's a dude who's been through a lot in his life. He's seen a lot in his life, and there are very few more driven than Tommy Pham to be the the best he can be at what he does. And I respect the hell out of a person like that. How can you not respect that out of Tommy Pham? So you saw the fans loving it and the players. How about, I put it as the background image here, mixed it into my graphic for the thumbnail on YouTube here. Michael Ciani and Lars Nootbaar going frickin' bonkers on the bench during the home run trot by Tommy Pham. That place was electric. Paul Goldschmidt. I want to give credit to who said it because they replied to one of my tweets with a screen grab. Well, they took a picture of their television set, which featured Paul Goldschmidt kind of peeking behind the dugout railing. You can just make out that it's him and his face and the big smile on his face. It was Cameron who tweeted at me and said, "Am I the only one who's never seen Goldie this pumped up?" And I retweeted that right away. It said, you could say that Paul Goldschmidt is enjoying the Tommy Pham experience. Yep, everybody at Busch was enjoying the Tommy Pham experience this evening. That much was clear. Cardinals win the game in the 5th inning. Lance Lynn, a little bit of an odd game by Lance Lynn. 5 innings, gives up just 1 run. Oli Marmol described after the game, and he did so with sort of a chuckle. I'll have to try to find out what the scoop is on Lance Lynn, but basically all he said, he came in, did not feel good today. and he was kind of said that with his tongue in his cheek a little bit, like whatever it was, Lance Lynn was blunt enough about it behind the scenes. But hey, you're not going to not take the ball if you can take the ball. He took the ball, 5 innings, 3 hits allowed, 1 run, 1 walk, just 3 Ks. It was simply a solo shot that Lance Lynn gave up tonight in the 2nd inning. That's all anybody got against him and all anybody got against the Cardinals. Because you have, the stone rolls down the hill, doesn't it? Because you have a 7-run lead at the conclusion of the 5th inning, you're able to throw some of your alternative bullpen guys. Fernandez gives you the 6th. It was the spot where they wanted to make sure they got through. And then Roycroft throws 2. Leahy throws 1. 1 hit allowed combined for the 3 relief pitchers that threw 4 innings. That's what you need, man. You're able to get the rest for the leverage guys. And now going into Wednesday afternoon, something we haven't said yet on the podcast, but you guys have all probably heard by now, Michael McGreevy, former first-round pick of the Cardinals back in 2021, will be making his major league debut starting for the Cardinals against Texas on Wednesday. The reason behind this, and I know there's some confusion about it, so I'll go ahead and jump right into this now, and then we'll dip back into the game before wrapping up talking about the trade tonight. I may not even have time for Down on the Farm simply because the content I've been putting out the last 48 hours has been absurd, and I need to go to sleep. However, I do want to talk a little bit about McGreevy. 4.45 ERA this year in Memphis. That's about what he was last year for Memphis. His most recent outing was a good one, 6 shutout innings. 2 hits allowed, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts for Michael McGreevy. He's going to get his opportunity on Wednesday, and the reason is because the Cardinals want to bake in some extra rest for the rest of the rotation. They're in a stretch right now where they'll by the time it's over, go 16 days in a row without an off day, 16 games without an off day. And so they're trying to maybe get out in front of it a little bit. Now, Sonny Gray is the first guy that gets pushed back, so he's the first guy to benefit from the extra rest day. Maybe there's something to that. Maybe they just wanted him to line up at Wrigley instead. Whatever the case is, they're going to get a look at Michael McGreevy on Wednesday. We don't know the roster move exactly yet, as far as I've seen. Maybe it was announced at Busch tonight by Oli postgame, but I would sincerely be surprised by that. We'll see what happens with Andre Palante. We know that Eric Fetty is going to have to be added to the roster on Thursday when he meets the team in Chicago. So that's kind of floating around. Sonny will start Thursday, though, and it will be Fetty's debut on Friday for the Cardinals at Wrigley Field. Whatever you think about the notion of McGreevy being necessary for this spot, why don't the Cardinals just have Sonny Gray pitch on turn? Well, they don't want to. They want to bake him in some extra rest. That's the decision they've made. He's not been performing well recently, so trying to give him any benefit that they can possibly glean might make some sense. The rest of the rotation, though, will also get that as they go into a bit of a modified 6-man for a little bit. But what this could do is it could keep Andre Palante on the roster. Maybe there's a reliever that's sent down, and then McGreevy obviously is going to start. Hopefully they let him go, 5 innings or so. keep the bullpen somewhat fresh, and then they send him back down, right? It would just be a blip on the radar for McGreevy, kind of like the times that we have seen Graceffo. That's going to be the moment, and then it's going to be over. But they were going to have to add McGreevy to, the 40-man roster eventually anyway. I think it was going to come after this year for Rule 5, although I might be a little bit off base on that. No, yeah, because 21, 2, 3, 4, it would be 5 after the season, I think is how it works. So either way, that's something that was maybe going to be in the offing as it is. So here comes Michael McGreevy for Wednesday. And it's not like and I saw some sentiment like this on Twitter too, and I think people's math was wrong. I tried to jump in on a couple people to explain it, but they couldn't just do a 6-man rotation, have Andre Palante be one of the 6, and still be able to get everybody the rest, because they need somebody to pitch tomorrow on Wednesday if they're going to successfully have the goal reached of getting extra rest for the guys in the rotation, because Palante just pitched. So it's going to be basically a 7-man rotation for a minute, but we had already seen Palante the previous day on Monday. So from Monday to 7 games out, it's going to be 7 different starting pitchers. And then depending on how they want to play it with guys going up and down with the bullpen, they might churn the bullpen a little bit. Obviously, Shawn Armstrong's going to have to be added in if they intend to add him in, which I think they probably will do. So once again, as I've continued to warn people when we've done live streams and such, a lot of moving parts. Even now that the deadline is over, the moving parts will not stop moving. So just be aware of that. There will be some roster changes over the next couple of days, but that's just part of the deal around this time of year. So what will we see from McGreevy? I honestly have no idea, but I'm curious to see. He's done an okay job at Memphis, but he's not a guy that's ever missed all too many bats, although he's had, within the last month and a half or so, has had a couple of outings where he's gotten like 9 strikeouts, 8 strikeouts, 7 strikeouts. So maybe there's something to it, and he's going to have a little giddy up tomorrow, and we'll see him be able to not only pitch to contact, but maybe miss a few bats. I'm excited to see him, and, we'll just see what it ends up being for the 24-year-old. I don't know if it's something that concerns people at all as it pertains to Sonny or anybody else in the rotation, that the Cardinals are aiming to get this extra rest. But I think when you have a veteran rotation, and it's been a pretty durable one outside of Steven Matz, like I remember going back to spring training, we talked about how Mo was really not focused on the pitching depth behind the rotation because, as he said in spring, we want the 5 that we have to go. We want those guys to go the distance and take the ball. And I said, hey, nice sentiment, Mo, but what happens if they get hurt? Well, Matz has gotten hurt, but he kind of always does that. And the other 4, outside of Sonny's hamstring at the beginning of the year, have been really, really durable. But you've also had guys that, outside of the one game that Gibby, I think it was his back that just locked up on him before the game, couldn't pitch, and you had to go emergency style with Libby that day in Miami, it was, I believe. Outside of that, you've really had guys that have been able to grit through things. We have heard a number of times, though, so-and-so really didn't feel great coming into this one, but he gave us what he had. That was what Oli said tonight about Lance Lynn with his 5 innings. And they said coming into the game, they knew that it was, and he even said something to the effect of it was pretty remarkable what he was able to do given us 5 innings, considering how he felt coming into the game, which maybe is something that's not all too uncommon when you really get into clubhouses and understand that these are human beings, and sometimes their body doesn't feel great. Anybody that's over the age of 30, I'm now 30 years old, so I start to feel it myself. Your body just sometimes doesn't cooperate. You've got soreness and aches and pains and various things that could be going on. Lance Lynn's a person too, and he's in his mid-30s, and whatever the case was, he just physically didn't feel great today. And in that first inning was throwing like half changeups, which he basically throws all fastballs. It's just a different type of fastball every time. But StatCast said, yeah, these are changeups in the mid-80s. And then it kind of got better on the velo as time went along, and he was throwing more fastballs throughout the game. But kind of weird to begin. Definitely something that raised some alarm bells until it didn't, until he kind of was able to get around that. Lance Lynn did mention after the game that the rain delay, which this game did start under a delay tonight at Busch, perhaps contributed to kind of not able to get as loose and ready to roll like he normally would under his normal routine. So maybe that contributed at the beginning, but did say he had a good feel for his changeup tonight. He said of all pitches, because he knows he's a fastball first kind of guy, but that was something he was able to utilize and got it done for the Cardinals in conjunction with what they did offensively with Tommy Pham. And obviously Mason Wynn mentioned his leadoff home run to set the tone, and they did a nice job working ABs against Scherzer. I mean, this was one of the Cardinals' very best games of the season, a complete game overall. And I'm seeing this from Benjamin Hockman, which I guess was pointed out by Jeff Jones as well on Twitter, that Lynn's velo was down early tonight, and after the game, he said that his knee was, quote, barky. So it was actually maybe the knee more than anything that was giving Lance Lynn a little bit of trouble tonight. But that just sort of goes to prove my point that I was trying to make about the rotation. When you have these veteran guys and these guys in their mid-30s, sometimes stuff is going to feel a little bit off physically. And to keep these guys at their best and at their full strength, it can make sense, especially as you get into the dog days here, to bake in some extra time. So I'm not going to claim to know the full scale and scope of why McGreevy is getting that start Wednesday, but that's to the best of my knowledge, some elements of it that would make sense. And so I'm just going to take the approach of interested to see. And, I hope Andre Palante doesn't get screwed in this whole thing. The best thing for him might be to go to Memphis and stay ready to start so that when there's a need, if there's a need, he can come back up. But I also, at this point in his career, he is good enough to be in the big leagues and deserves it. So I don't really want to see him get optioned. But what would his role in the bullpen look like? There are definitely some things to kind of figure out that the Cardinals are going to have to sort through in the days ahead. But McGreevy starts Wednesday. I think it's probably something that makes some sense for the Cardinals. Want to double back real quick to the Pham stuff before we talk the Dylan Carlson trade to wrap up. Was just kind of scrolling Twitter very idly, and the radio calls on the home run by Pham from both John Rooney, Ricky Horton, and then the Spanish broadcast with Paulo Asensio and Benji Molina. Unbelievable. If you guys have not heard these, you need to go to Twitter and find them. VHS always retweets and sometimes reposts the audio from a lot of the radio calls, whether it's home team or occasionally more than occasionally, he'll end up with the radio calls or the TV calls from the road team, which can be kind of fun when the Cardinals have a big moment and see how the other broadcast reacts to it. So he shared some of those tonight, but my goodness, Ethan Hannaford as well, the booth assistant for KMOX, their Clubhouse reporter, had a video going in the booth of the sights and sounds during the Pham Grand Slam. You guys got to check that out. I'm just going to refer you all to @Van on Twitter because I'm just scrolling his timeline because he's been retweeting and sharing what everybody's been saying about it. Polo was unbelievable on the Spanish broadcast. I just had to get that in there while I was thinking of it because if you're a Cardinals fan, that'll give you some goosebumps. Listen to both of those calls by the KMOX broadcast and the Spanish radio broadcast tonight. Man, what a cool moment for Tommy Pham. Hopefully just the beginning, right? The beginning of what could be more to come. This was what the Cardinals had in mind when they went out and grabbed Tommy Pham at the deadline or day before the deadline. And I don't think it can get better than that, but hopefully more moments like it. So now that we've said everything that I can think to say about Pham's home run, let's talk about the guy on the roster that he replaced today, Dylan Carlson, right before the bell, 5 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday, traded to the Tampa Bay Rays in exchange for right-handed relief pitcher Shawn Armstrong, whose name I, for whatever reason, have a hard time saying. I want to put the R in Armstrong into the Shawn, and it's not where it belongs. Armstrong has a 5.40 ERA this season in 38 games. He started 7 games, I believe, as an opener. 46 and 2/3 innings pitched, 50 strikeouts, so that's the thing that you can be a little bit excited about. The fact that he's had very good stuff to be able to miss that many bats. 50 Ks in 46 innings is a nice little ratio, so he can do that. Here's the problem. The whip, walks plus hits per inning pitched, 1.607. Over 1.6 walks and hits per inning for Shawn Armstrong this season for Tampa. Not the Tampa Bay reliever that many were hoping to see the Cardinals acquire today, but in fairness, Pete Fairbanks was not traded, and the Cardinals will now see him and Dylan Carlson. The return is coming quickly, as I was just looking this up tonight. Tampa is coming to town August 6th through the 8th. So the Cardinals are going to go to Chicago after this Rangers series wraps up. They're going to take on the Cubs, and then they're going to be back home for that makeup game with the New York Mets, and then it's going to be the Tampa Bay Rays. So the Cardinals have the series at Wrigley. It's a 4-gamer, but then they're right back to Busch with no off day because the Monday, August 5th game is a makeup with the Mets. So we're going to see Dylan Carlson potentially very soon back at Busch Stadium. That is going to be fascinating. That is going to be so bizarre because a lot of times when you have the reunion, it's like, oh, I haven't seen you in a while. How's it going? How are the new digs? He's going to be brand new there. We will have just seen him last week. That's going to be awkward, man. It actually won't be. I think he's going to be just fine. And I think, honestly, hopefully next week we see a refreshed Dylan Carlson who's just glad to be somewhere that he might have a chance to contribute. Look, like John Mose, I read the quote from Mo. It wasn't working here, and it wasn't fair to him, and frankly, it wasn't fair to Oli Marmol, to the Cardinals, to not have a better right-handed option off the bench. I was surprised after Friday night when Dylan bungled the play in right field and had a tough day at the plate against the Nationals. I was surprised they didn't option him right away and just bring up Ivan Herrera just to be the placeholder as a right-handed bat until we saw the deadline play out. And I know you need his catcher ability at Memphis probably so that you had enough catchers there to cover it. But, man, that's how rough it had been for Dylan. And so to maybe get to go somewhere for him that he's able to find a fresh start and start on new footing and hit the ground running, you never know. Maybe he'll find that first home run against the Cardinals, first home run of 2024. So far, I think it's 138 plate appearances without one. Tommy Pham had one plate appearance with the Cardinals and already came up with his first home run, which is, I saw Martin Kilcoyne first share that as a tweet, and I was like, Martin, bro, that's tough. That's tough, but it's true. It's accurate, so it's just good reporting by Martin. So it is what it is. But I wonder, Cardinals fans, how do you feel about the deadline now that it's over? We raved about the trade from Monday. Most of us thought and agreed rather universally that bringing in Pham, and we'll see what to make of Eric Fetty, but bringing in those guys was a positive. You could see the cost efficiency of having Fetty on the books for next year. Helps the rotation, helps Mo, makes their job a little easier in the offseason. All that was pretty easy to tell. Today, on Tuesday, you wanted to see, I think, the Cardinals find another leverage arm for their bullpen. They get Shawn Armstrong instead as part of the Dylan deal, so that's efficient. You add a reliever for the guy that you know you needed to trade. That's at least something. But at the same time, is he the guy that's going to improve your team? Whose spot's he going to take? Roycroft was good tonight. Leahy was good tonight. I'll be curious to see kind of where we see Armstrong land. Something you should know about him, though, he did have a great year in 2023 for Tampa. A 1.38 ERA last year in 52 innings, 54 Ks. So very kind of similar strikeout rate. And was very, very good. The whip was 0.904 last year. This year it's 1.6. Just a massive jump. He's given up a bunch of hits. The walks aren't crazy dissimilar to last year. It's higher, though. It's a higher total. I guess that's not true. 11 walks last year in 52 innings, 19 walks this year in 46 innings. So walks are up, but base hits are drastically up that he has allowed this season. Hits per 9, 10.8. Last year it was 6.2. For his career, he's an 8.7. He's a 33-year-old veteran of the league. He's been around the block. Turns 34 in September. But Shawn Armstrong, that's the reliever the Cardinals picked up. Did you think the Cardinals should have done more today? Again, the relief market was hot, but a lot of those guys that were dealt, top prospects were going. Or a lot of times it was guys who used to be top prospects, but they've fallen on hard times. But still have a pedigree, still pretty young. Robbie Snelling was involved in a trade where the Padres, Mike Schultz Padres, ended up getting Tanner Scott, the lefty we talked so much about from the Marlins. And Robbie Snelling, who could be a future frontline starter if he can turn things around at AA, he's still only like 20, 21 years old. He goes for a rental reliever. I mean, some unbelievable prices were being paid. So understanding all of that, how do you feel about it? Are you understanding and reasonable about the fact that it would have cost the Cardinals a pretty penny? And I'm not talking about money financially. I'm talking about prospects to pick up a leveraged relief arm at this deadline. I think by the time we pulled closer to the deadline, you could have looked back and said, honestly, the time to make the trade for a leveraged reliever was several days before the deadline, because as you got closer, it seemed like the prices just kept going up. And the Cardinals, there was interest from the Angels and the Nationals in Carlson. Luis Garcia was interesting from the Angels, former Cardinal back in 2021. Dylan Floro was interesting from the Nationals. And I thought maybe the Cardinals were going to get one of those guys for DC today. Instead, both those guys were traded at the bell to other teams because they had prospects that the Cardinals, weren't probably going to be willing to give up. And those aren't even closer type guys. Those are late middle relief leverage type of guys. Luis Garcia, Dylan Floro. So we'll see on Shawn. I did it again. I'm not even going to delete it. Shawn Armstrong. Shawn. It's just the way your mouth opens. It's a linguistics thing. That's a hard thing to say. Shawn Armstrong. He should not be allowed to have that be his name. It's just too hard to say. Anyway, if I'm wrong about that, tell me in the comments that you have no problem saying his name. Go ahead and try it, though. Say it 5 times fast and see if you feel so strongly about it then. It might just be because I have mush mouth after talking for, feels like 15 of the last 48 hours. I've just been running my mouth, doing podcasts and radio shows and everything like that. The one thing I will say about Armstrong, the FIP, the fielding independent pitching, 3.76, which is a solid run 0.75, like 1.7 runs lower than his 5.4 ERA. So that may be something that you could feel like benefits the Cardinals to pick this guy up. I'm trying to look at his game log. He had a game on the 29th of June where he gave up 6 runs in a third of an inning. Just like one bad night took his ERA from 3.96 to 5.40. He's just gotten beat up a few times. But more recently, he's been solid. His last 5 innings are scoreless. Has been missing bats. Going back to a couple of weeks ago, July 13th. Since then, he is, 7 innings, 9 strikeouts, just 1 run. Still giving up a ton of hits, but he's scattered them. So we'll see. I'm kind of intrigued on maybe what they're going to get from Armstrong. He's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different games. Well, more than that. 9 different games this season where he's thrown 2 innings. So he's a guy that can give you multiple. We'll see what the Cardinals end up getting out of him, and we'll see, obviously, what has to happen with the roster to facilitate his inclusion when the time comes. But I don't know. For me, I felt like they had to trade Carlson because it wouldn't have been fair to him to stash him in Memphis and let him rot there. Because unlike Jordan Walker, there never would have been a plan for Carlson to come back. For Walker, there is still a plan and hope that he'll make it back. For Carlson, he would have just been literally rotting down in Memphis, Tennessee, which I guess there are worse places to be in the world, but from a feeling like your career is on the brink standpoint, wouldn't have been fair to him. Now, hopefully the Rays use him. They traded Arozarena away. They've got hopefully an opening that they can give Dylan some playing time, and they largely did sell off. I'll be curious, what if they do catch fire, though, with guys like Christopher Morel that they added from the Cubs, Dylan Carlson from the Cardinals? What if they end up having a pretty good run? They kept Fairbanks as their closer. They've got prospects to come up and replace maybe some of the guys they got rid of. I would love to see if they were sellers and just find a way to win 85 and still sneak into a wild card. AL is pretty competitive, though. So we'll see if that ends up happening. Royals were really good buyers at the deadline. Good credit to their front office. Their fans are probably pretty happy. Even if you don't love all the names they picked up, they were aggressive, which is fun. Very active day for them. But I asked on Twitter, knowing the situation with Dylan's role in the roster crunch that happened after obviously adding Tommy Pham, are you satisfied with the Cardinals trading Dylan Carlson for Shawn Armstrong? And 59.2% of people that have voted, over 2,800 votes, 59.2% said yes, 40.2 are not, or pardon me, 40.8% are not satisfied. But I think part of that might be because you're just mad that they bungled Dylan Carlson and he was a top prospect and now he's not, and you didn't get much for him. But in reality, that process didn't happen over the weekend, right? That's been something that's been happening for the last couple of years, and it is unfortunate. And if he goes on to thrive with the Rays, it will be another example on that ledger of Tyler O'Neill, Lane Thomas, Juan Yepes you can put in there. A number of guys, obviously a Rosarena, Dulles Garcia, guys that have gone to other places and have thrived, especially of the outfield category. Carlson hasn't done it yet. I'm not assuming the sale, but remember the other day when I said I would buy all your Dylan Carlson stock? This is why. I knew he was getting traded, and the Rays is probably the best place he could have ended up because they have a very good player development history and track record. So let me know all your thoughts. Are you upset about the Dylan thing, or do you kind of get it, but maybe you kind of get it and you're just upset that the Cardinals didn't find a way to get another leverage reliever, but maybe Shawn Armstrong finds a way to pitch more like his 3.7 fielding independent pitching, his FIP, instead of his 5.4 ERA. Maybe he can pitch more like last year when his ERA was below 1.5. And maybe Riley O'Brien comes back and finds his command and his health, and he ends up being a wipeout guy. Because remember all those videos I was doing back in Jupiter at spring training talking about Riley O'Brien? It's because we saw something in him, and Cardinals fans haven't really gotten a full chance to see what he's about yet. So maybe there is a world in which the Cardinals did everything they should have done at the deadline, and hopefully Tuesday's win propels them forward into some good momentum, not only Wednesday afternoon with Michael McGreevy on the bump, but at Wrigley over the weekend. That, though, is going to do it for this edition of the show. We don't have Down on the Farm tonight because I seriously am going to have laryngitis. Is that the one where you lose your voice? I don't know. My brain is mush as well. That's going to do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate you guys so much, as always, for listening, and we will talk to you next time on B-Schaeff Daily. Peace.